Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. On behalf of Manila House, this is Bambina Olivares, Director of Programming, welcoming members and non-members alike to today's online conversation, Going for Gold, the Portuguese Golden Visa, which is brought to you by Golden Visa Centrale. If this is your first time to join us online, allow me to introduce Manila House. We are a private members club that opened in February 2017 with the aim of bringing together an assemblage of people from the business, creative, cultural, and intellectual communities who are drawn to each other by shared interest to continuously learn about art, culture, food, business, and politics, and from the diversity of their fellow members themselves. It is a community of curious, committed, and caring individuals, and it lives on beyond the physical confines of the club. We began our webinar series in May 2020, covering and encouraging discussion about a wide range of topical issues, from business and investment to health and wellness and art and culture. We have featured both local and international speakers and continue to broaden our reach among members and non-members alike. Our previous webinars are available for viewing on the Manila House YouTube channel. That said, for the members among us, you might like to consider, for the non-members among us, you might like to consider membership to Manila House. We have a limited number of memberships still available. Please email membership@manilahouseinc.com for more information. Please also be informed that in compliance with the allowable IATF and LGU capacities, Manila House is open for dine-in to fully vaccinated members and their guests, and our takeaway services are open to the public. Please call us on 0917-816-3685 to place your orders. Before we begin, just a few ground rules. This event is being recorded and live streamed and will be up on the Manila House YouTube channel in a day or two. Please use the chat box and Q&A box for any questions and comments, and we'll get to your questions as we go along. Thanks again. So let's begin. These are uncertain times, and in such times, thoughts naturally turn to plan B. Where can we go? Where can we live? And where will we be welcome and safe should the need arise? Portugal has become more and more popular to Filipinos looking for a second passport or residency overseas. And here to tell us more about Portugal's Golden Visa program is Vicky Luis, a Manila House member and old friend who is the president of Golden Visa Centrale, Philippines.
Thank you so much.
Vicky. Yes, sorry. Let me introduce Vicky to you quickly before I hand over to her for the rest of today's program. Vicky Luis graduated in California and has been in the real estate and mortgage industry in the San Francisco Bay Area since the mid-90s. Vicky is one of the pioneers who brought the Portugal Golden Visa program to the Philippines and has numerous sales with a 100% success rate. So with that introduction, Vicky, please tell us more about your program.
Thank you so much, Bambina, for that kind introduction. And good afternoon, everybody. So thank you for joining us today. I am so happy to be here with you, although not face-to-face like it used to be. Nevertheless, we're all here. So as mentioned, I'm Vicky Luis, president of Golden Visa Centrale and a fellow Manila House member. Today we will share why the Golden Visa program of Portugal is the gateway to Europe and the process it entails to embark on this program, plus, of course, the benefits of having a second residency. I introduced the Golden Visa program of Portugal to the Philippines in 2019, and I'm proud to say that we've had a 100% success rate in processing Golden Visa applications. I was so passionate about the program as I felt it could help a lot of Filipinos. As also, I have a 14-year-old daughter who will eventually be going to university. And this is what got me started. I learned that as a resident of the EU, if I sent her to school for university later on, I would realize a lot of savings. And later on, we will share a video as to how much savings we're actually talking about. It's really night and day. I was so excited to know that once one gets their resident card as Filipinos, you no longer need a Schengen visa. Additionally, with one investment of only 280,000 euros, you can bring 3 generations of your family, and we'll discuss that later on. There is absolutely no need to relocate you only have to stay in Portugal an average of 7 days a year. And those are actually just the highlights. We will go over them in depth later. So these are some of the benefits. The process simply takes 6 to 8 months. Then you can live, work, study, avail of the free education and healthcare in Portugal, and eventually in the European Union. So today it is with great pleasure to introduce my partners and the people that I've always worked with. Some of them, like Rakesh and Rosalia, have been to the Philippines at the Manila House numerous times, and they totally love it there. So let me introduce to you Rosalia Koyesh, Head of Sales and International Markets of Irish Capital Partners.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Vicky. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Rosalia. And also Rakesh Mijifia, Chief Investment Officer, also from Irish Capital Partners.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be
So
here.
as mentioned, Rakesh and Rosalia has met many Filipino clients, Manila House, non-Manila House members. They've been to Manila and love it there. And most of our clients have called me during the time they went to Portugal for their biometrics and have expressed how nicely located the properties are, and they called me and they're very happy with the locations of their investments. Also, of course, last but not least, Andre Miranda, of managing partner of Pinto Ribeiro Advogados in Lisbon and Porto. They have 2 branches. Good afternoon, Andre.
Thank you, Vicky. It's a pleasure to be here in this webinar.
And of course, Laura is going to be here. She's also with Pinto Ribeiro. She's one of the lawyers that I'm sure all of you will be working with along the way during this process. So ladies and gentlemen, we will have Q&A at the end. Please type in your questions and we will try to go over them as much as we can. Thank you so much. I will now turn you over to Rakesh.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, again. And thank you, Vicky and Bambina, and welcome to all of the Manila House members. So we're going to take you on a little bit of a journey of Portugal through this presentation. Hopefully you find it interesting. And before I give you a bit more introduction to Irish as a company, I think it makes sense if we set the scene a little bit. I'll play a quick video about Portugal, which tries to highlight some of the key factors that people look at when they're looking at these types of investments. So let me just make sure that this is all set up with sound. Okay. So that hopefully sets the little bit of the theme, come to visit, come to stay, which is very much in tune with what we are looking to explain to you today, which is an investment into Portugal, which is property related, but also has the additional benefits of not only being a sound investment, but has eligibility for Golden Visa purposes as well. So before I go any further, I think it does make sense if I give you a quick introduction to us, Arish. So we are a real estate investment and development company. We've been now established for coming up to 11 years. We started out life very much in the UK, and that is indeed where our head office is. And for the first 6 years or so, we focused on what I would call niche asset investments. So student accommodation, care homes for the elderly, as well as residential and commercial schemes. But when Brexit got announced around 4 years ago, we very much decided to expand our European footprint, and having done quite a bit of due diligence across various European countries, we became bought into the story of Portugal. We like the macroeconomics there, we like the stability in the government, and we feel there's various factors that support real estate investing. In terms of our business areas, if we can call it that, to divide it up into three main areas, obviously we continue to be heavily invested in the UK. We also now have various investments in Portugal, some of which you will see today, which are in the residential space that are qualified for Golden Visa. And then more globally, we do have investments around the world. But because real estate is a very local business where we transact in countries that we are not expert in, we typically partner with people who are. And so it just makes sense for us to approach the market in that way, as we do in our home locations, the UK and Portugal. This is just a snapshot of some of our prior developments and investments. You can see here the 5 that are on the right. These are all based in Portugal. They're all sold out now, some of which we have actually presented before at Manila House, and Vicky has introduced many of her clients to. Starting out with, I think, the beginning, and I think it makes sense for us to explain to you the investment hypothesis that we embarked upon when we first decided to become invested into Portugal, because I think this will resonate with many of you who are perhaps considering this yourselves. And I think for anyone embarking on this journey, we had a 3-pronged test that we wanted to sort of tick off before we move forward. And that was based on understanding, first and foremost, the stability in the government in that foreign country. Was it encouraging to foreign investment? Secondly, we wanted to understand the nature of the economy. Was it well diversified, or was it focused on one segment of the market? And then lastly, obviously, we want to understand the state of the real estate market. How well diversified is it? Is it saturated? Is it emergent? If we could tick those 3 things off, then we would have what we would call a smart investment. Smart, why? Because typically with any property investment, you want it to behave in a typical way, i.e. want it to give you yield and capital growth. The additional benefit you have with these particular investments is that they also give you the Golden Visa eligibility as well. So for those of you who have not been to Portugal, this will be somewhat of an overview vision of the country, and those that have been to Portugal, this will be revision. But just to recap, in that sense, Portugal is on the western side of Europe. It's land bordered with Spain, and on the other side, it has beautiful coastlines. Population of 10.5 million, so a relatively small country, has a life expectancy of 81 years old. I think that very much speaks to their healthcare system. Portuguese is the language that is spoken there, but as I was relieved to find out, actually 60% of the population do in fact speak English, and all of the public spaces are dual signposted. Capital is Lisbon, currency is euro. Does have a very much a Mediterranean climate, which actually pairs very well with all of the beautiful coastlines that it has. And it has an affordable cost of living. We'll come on to sort of benchmark that versus the rest of Europe in a second. In terms of the government itself, it has a very social liberal government, and just to explain what that means, it has any number of policies that are both progressive and inclusive in nature. There's perhaps no better example of that than the Golden Visa scheme itself, which is a scheme that was introduced more than 10 years ago which was to encourage foreign investment into the country. So it does encourage foreign direct investment, but not only in the individual sense. There are now any number of tax policies that the government has embraced in the last 8 to 10 years, which is also inviting multinational companies to be located within Portugal. Portugal is never in the news for the wrong reasons. It is, in fact, one of the third most peaceful country in the world. And typically it's in the news because of Ronaldo, the footballer. In terms of the general legal system, it's very much based on a constitution, civil judiciary, much like most of Europe. And in terms of main governmental themes, it focuses on infrastructure, healthcare, we've already touched upon that, and transport systems. In terms of a quick overview of the economy, I think most people's frame of reference these days when they're looking at any new country and economy is to start with the financial crisis back in 2008 and land very much into today, which is in the midst of COVID. So we've sort of taken that frame of reference. Starting with 2008, I think it's fair to say that Portugal is certainly one of the winners coming out of the financial crisis. They spent a long time cleaning up their banking systems, etc. So much so that now you see that for the last 3 years running, Portugal has been predicted by the IMF to have a GDP growth rate of in excess of 3%. That's in advance of countries like the UK and Germany. And there's a reason for that. It's not just because they've cleaned up their banking system, but in fact, Portugal does have a very mixed economy. I know most people's frame will be that Portugal's a touristic spot, which indeed it is, but it does historically have a very mixed economy in the manufacturing space, in the textile space. More recently, it's becoming one of the leading tech hubs within Europe. Obviously, travel and tourism, we've touched upon. Its real estate market has become quite important for it and very mixed in nature. On the right-hand side, you can see one of the commentators, which is Ernst & Young, talking about Portugal and how it's led the way across Europe. There's various reports like this, which we can share with you after the Zoom if you're interested. This is just a snapshot of those companies that have chosen to take advantage of Portugal's inviting tax policies in the last 8 to 10 years and have set up their European headquarters within Portugal. Hopefully these are all names that people can identify with. And what you tend to have, obviously, is with all these large multinational companies, you do get a large expat community. More recently, it's been a lot of Americans that have been moving to Portugal. And with those expat communities, you get a lot of their families, and that has indeed helped the education system. The university system within Portugal has historically always been very highly ranked, but now what you're finding with all of these expat communities is that middle level has also improved, with many international schools opening up in the last sort of 8 to 10 years. In terms of COVID, I think it's fair to say that overall Portugal has handled the crisis very well, particularly when you compare it to its immediate neighbour, Spain. I think there's some structural reasons why that is the case. It does have a smaller population, but also it had invested in its healthcare system in the last 8 to 10 years, so perhaps was better placed to do so. Portugal now, I think, is the #1 place in Europe that has the highest number of vaccinations, and so therefore that V-shaped recovery that we're all hoping for seems to now be springing into action. I was in Portugal a few months ago over the summer, and it was difficult for me to get the hotel that I wanted, etc. So very much everything coming back to life. In terms of the real estate market, and obviously this is an important component of any of these types of considerations, one of the things that really attracted us when we first set out on this journey 4 or 5 years ago into Portugal was this metric at the bottom of the screen, where you can see a comparison of residential pricing per square meter across various European city centres. And you can see here that Lisbon is very much undervalued versus its European cousins. And from our perspective, there was no reason for that, particularly when you take into account the nature of the economy, how mixed it was, the IMF prediction. So as a real estate investor, This is exactly what we like to see because we feel that there will be room for future growth. Fast forward to today, and you can see that there's any number of commentators, whether it's Bloomberg, Forbes, etc., talking about Portugal from a real estate investment perspective as being one of the few bright spots, both pre and post-COVID. And so we feel very much vindicated in our convictions from 4.5, 5 years ago. What does that mean in terms of numbers and yields and capital growth? Because ultimately, as I said, what you want from your property investment is for it to perform in typical ways. Empirically, you can see that Portugal house pricing as of 2021 has grown in the last couple of years by close to 10%. In places like Lisbon, it's over 5%. From our perspective, we would be far more conservative in looking at these growth rates going forward. So we would expect yields of 4%, capital growth rates of around 5%. Some of you may be thinking, well, if it's grown this much already, will it continue? And I think what it's important to keep in mind is that it started at such a low base. And so we still expect that pull to par effect to come into play. There are also other supporting factors that go into real estate investment. And this is just a snapshot of some of those. I think it's interesting for people to understand who is buying into Portugal in terms of foreign nationalities. And you can see here that the number one investor coming into Portugal are the Brazilians. There's obviously commonality in language there, so there's some historic reasons for that to be the case. And then you have the UK and the French. Those bottom two, if you like, historically have not been golden visa investors. They're people that are wanting a lifestyle change, wanting to start businesses within Portugal, etc. So unlike what is reported in the press, it's not the Chinese who dominate the investment market into Portugal. The other factor is really currency. The euro has underperformed largely against the dollar in the last few years. So this is an opportunity that most people see if they are dollar-based to diversify their investments. That includes not only US investors, but also dollar peg investors, so people from the Middle East, Hong Kong, etc. And then you have the Golden Visa scheme itself, which, as we mentioned, since it was launched in 2012, has been hugely popular. I think this number is slightly out of date. It's actually attracted now over 6 billion in investment, and that continues to be the case going forward. So on that note, I will pause there and hand you over to Andre from Pinto Rivera, who's the managing partner lawyer at his firm in Lisbon, who can talk you through some of the details and specifics of the Golden Visa program itself. So Andre, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rakesh, and it's a pleasure to be here in this webinar. The Portuguese Golden Visa program was introduced in the end of 2012. Initially, it was not so aware in the world, but immediately it started to be very successful. So this is a residency by investment program, and as you can see, it already attracted more than 6 billion euros of investment, foreign investment to Portugal. So this was, I think, the Portuguese government, it was a very, very smart move, because when Portugal came out of the financial crisis, it had to attract foreign investment. So the government decided to introduce this program to do that. We have different types of investors. Of course, that real estate has been the most attractive one, with more than 94% of the investors. Also, the government, when they introduced the program, they offer different types of investment. So you can go in terms of the real estate investment from 280,000 euros up to 500,000 euros. And then there's also the possibility to do different types of investment, not in real estate, in equity funds, or even transferring money to Portugal. But these options are less attractive and very scarce. So in terms of the main requirements that you need to be aware, so it's quite easy. So this is one of the things that really attracts, because the processing, it's not complicated. Obviously, that Portugal is within the European Union, so some of the rules are very similar in terms of European Union countries. So one of them is to have a clean criminal record. So we need to submit a non-criminal record. You also need, before submitting, to make proof that you made the investment activity. So this is very important. So when you start the program, besides preparing the paperwork, first you need to put your eyes on the investment that you're going to do. So without completing the investment, you cannot start the process. In terms of what I think are the main key points, definitely the short period of stay that is required, only 7 days per year. This is very, very good because almost all our clients are not willing to move to Portugal, although they are becoming legal residents in Portugal. And so it's a really short period of stay when we compare with other programs in Europe. Also, one of the key features is that the concept of family in Portugal is quite broad. So with a single investment, you are able to include all your family members. And we are talking about not only children, but also parents or parents-in-law. So this is very, very one of the big benefits about this program. Another key important point is that by the fact that you become legal resident in Portugal, you are not going to become automatically tax resident. So this is very important because you are going to own a property in Portugal. This property is going to generate income to you. Of course, that on this income, you will pay tax in Portugal, but the Portuguese tax authorities are not going to double tax you on anything that you generate outside of Portugal. So you are not becoming a tax resident, but of course you will need some tax compliance in Portugal. And this is in terms of the main features of the program. When we see other programs in Europe, and of course that are other countries like Spain, Greece, even Malta, they are offering similar programs, but the fact, of course, not because I'm Portuguese, but also because I get these comments and this output from my clients, I think Portugal does offer a very balanced program with different benefits, some of them similar to other programs in Europe, but I think that, as I mentioned, the short period of stay, the short path to the Portuguese citizenship as well, because although this is a residency by investment program, after 5 years, if you hold your investment and then if you pass the Portuguese test, you can get the Portuguese citizenship, and as a consequence, you can become also a European Union citizen. And Portugal do accept multiple citizenships. So the question is, after 5 years, what do you do? So you can go either to the permanent residency permit, which is a stable permit, or to the citizenship, as I mentioned, or even both. Okay, so we have clients that have applied for both. So we have clients that not applied for both if they are not willing to resign or if they come from countries where it's not possible to resign their citizenship and they need to make an option. And then the permanent residency permit is also valid for these clients. So after 5 years of investment, you are able to step into this and get a very long-term status in terms of becoming a European resident. And also after this period, of course, you can sell back your property, so you don't need to be committed to the investment, and you are free to basically to recover the investment made. Also important question is about what are the fees involved and what is the cost. The government has different administrative fees. So these are fees that are paid directly to the Portuguese government, to the immigration authorities. There are some initial fees when you start the process, 533 euros per applicant. And then after you are approved, you need to pay 5,325 euros for the issuance of your residency card. And then on each renewal, this is going to be decreased 50% to 2,663 euros. So let's say for a typical family of 4, which is normally husband, wife, and 2 children, you can expect around 44,000 euros of cost in terms of the government fees.
So, Vicky, this was actually the short video that we were going to play regarding some of the education benefits. So I don't know if you want to add anything else, but otherwise I'll play the video.
Yes, actually, in the beginning, I shared with you why I did this. It was because my daughter, who's 14 now and was 12 when I started this, would eventually be going to university. And this is how we will show you the huge savings, which is quite significant, that you're going to realize once your child goes to school as a resident of the EU compared to that of a foreign student. So yeah, we're going to share that with you right now. Thank you.
Did you know non-European students pay more than 10 times the tuition fees than European citizens for the same education degree in Europe? Yes, you heard me right. Brandon from Ireland pays 3,000 euros tuition fees per year, while John pays 45,000 euros, both studying medicine in Dublin. Even more concerning, John, as a non-EU citizen, may not be able to live and work in Europe after graduating. So, as parents, what can we do? Easy. Have you heard about the Portuguese Golden Visa program? 1. Invest in an eligible property for as low as 350,000 euros. 2. Obtain your Portuguese residency card. 3. Spend as little as 7 days a year in Portugal for 5 years. 4. Apply for you and your family's citizenship to acquire a lifetime of European rights and benefits. Hurry up and don't miss out on this limited window of opportunity.
So I think now we've given set the scene a little bit. Maybe if I hand back to you, Vicky, and you can introduce the next part.
Yes. So I'd like to introduce Rosalia Koyesh to show us some investment opportunities in Portugal. Like I've mentioned to you, I have sold numerous investment properties from Irish capital to my Filipino friends and clients. And as mentioned, when they all went for their biometrics, they were very, very pleased. So I think it's important that because we cannot all be in Portugal at this time, to look for the investment of choice, that you have to be able to trust the developer. You have to look at the location of the property, and you have to really look at what kind of yields it gives you, and if there's a buyback program or a rental guarantee, and also track record, right? It's so I feel very comfortable and happy to be partnered with Irish in this event. So I'd like to turn you over to Rosalia.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you. We also feel very happy to work with you, and we have a great experience in Manila, and looking forward to be back. Hopefully by the end of the year, we should be able to be there physically. So as you said, now is the time that we are going to introduce the investment opportunities in Portugal that will meet both the purpose of our clients. One, to be able to diversify their investment portfolio into Europe, in euro currency, in a safe, stable, prosperous country. And the second one, to be able to benefit of all those, or the Golden Visa residency and all those benefits that Andre has just taken us through. If we actually recall this slide that Andre showed about what are the routes or the avenues that will take us to the Golden Visa, the major two ones and the most popular are: 1, the property investment, and 2, the investment of the private equity fund. So we at Irish Capital Partners have an option for both these investments, and we are going to explain you a little bit about both. The first one would be the property investment. So we have a project that's recently launched, which is the 6th project of Irish Capital Partners in Portugal, that is located in the south of Portugal in the region of the Algarve. Why we have chosen this particular region? For 2 reasons. First, because of the investment opportunity that Algarve is offering now to all the investors. And second, because this is a location that still gives access to the Golden Visa for the buyers of the properties. If you remember, Andre has also explained that there are limited locations within Portugal that will entitle the buyers to access the Golden Visa benefits. So from the 1st of January 2022, Porto, Lisbon, and the majority of the Algarve are excluded from the Golden Visa program. So whether you buy an apartment of 500,000 euros or even if it's a mansion of 20 million euros, will not give you the access to the Golden Visa. So there is some exceptions to that, to the law, and there are still some locations which are not interior, which are beautiful locations by the beach that will still give the access. Sagres, where we are located in the west point of the Algarve, is one of them. And that is why for us is very precious in terms of both investment, but also on the benefits that will give our clients. So to explain you a little bit more about the Algarve, it is the southern region of Portugal, the touristic destination known worldwide, very famous for all North Europeans, the natural place for them to find the sun, golfing, beach activities. We have beautiful hotels, luxury villas, condominium. There's a lot of activities linked to that tourist in the Algarve, but it's not only a touristic destination. Algarve is also a wealthy region. And actually, it is only behind Lisbon. So it is at the 83% of the GDP per capita of the average union. And this is only after Lisbon, so before Porto and many other bigger cities in Portugal. It is also quite strong in terms of the real estate. So when we if we go back to those slides that my colleague Raquel was showing, the growth on real estate on pricing last year, it was at around 9.9%, but that was the average on the overall country. But of course, it differs from region to region. In the Algarve, it's been in excess of 12% growth yearly, and is expected to continue to be leading all the growth of the country. So Algarve is a region that it is giving lifestyle and is also giving the possibility of a good investment, a good return. In terms of Sagres, where we are located, it is on the very west, where the Atlantic joins the Mediterranean, and that means that we are surrounded by beach. So we have the nearest one 200 meters from us, but actually within 1.5 kilometers, we have 6 different beaches, some of them in the Atlantic Ocean, some of them in the Mediterranean Sea. Golfing is a very big activity and actually economy engine within the Algarve. So for those that practice, they will find lots of options just around our project, over 30 golf courses with international tournaments. But for those that don't, it is actually something very important to consider, because these will give us a very good occupancy in our apartment if we intend to rent it short term, because we do have lots of, as I said, tournaments that are happening throughout all the years. So whether it's spring, autumn, winter, there will be always demand for our apartment. So this is South Beach Sagres. It is a refurbishment project. There is a building as of today, which we are going to convert into a residential condominium of 120 apartments, 2 typologies, 92 studios and 28 two-bedroom apartments, starting from 280,000 euros up to 359,000 euros. All of those units eligible for the Golden Visa, as Andres said, for both, or for the main applicant, but also along their family. So one investment on, or the purchase of one of our units of 280,000 euros will give the investor the right to access the Golden Visa for him and all the direct family. It is beautiful condominium with lots of facilities. We do have a lagoon pool, we have an on-site gym, beautiful landscape gardens, we have a surfing room, which it's very actually popular in Sagres or in our town. Beautiful also reception, and a nice, very actually a beautiful sea view rooftop terrace on one of the buildings. And one thing that is very important, and I think that we experience with many of the Filipino buyers, is that this project is a freehold and full ownership. So for those that are investing with us, will have their own title deed, and they will have full control in the property. So that means that whenever they want to sell, rent it out, it will be their own decision without any limitations. Said this, many of the clients, they also want to have a very convenient hands-off investment. And that is the reason why we offer an optional 3% for 5 years. So this is not compulsory for those that prefer to use the apartment as their residency, or for those that prefer not to rent it out, they can do, or rent it out from their side, they can opt for that. But we offer a convenient 3% yearly for 5 years, and still give the opportunity to use free of cost for 14 days a year the apartment, which will be off peak season, no summer and no December. So this is the project. It is a total of 4 buildings, building A, B, C, and D. Building C and D are fully sold out, and we do have the last 6 units available in building B, which are 2-bedroom units. Building B is where we have all the facilities. We do have the gym, the rooftop terrace, the reception, and building A has still some studios, some of them on the ground floor with private garden, some others on the first and second floor with a terrace. These are some more of the images, but we will show soon a video that will give you a wider image of the project. This is the Lagoon Pool. Some more information about the town. The town is very lively. It's a beach town that is sunny throughout the year, has actually visitors any time of the year, because it offers amazing lifestyle, but also is very famous for the seafood. Sagres is visited because of the lobster and the oyster from everywhere in the world. And we do have restaurants from the high end in the hotels to also like local chiringuitos by the beach. These are some of the names that you can find walking distance within the project. Many hotel options also around us. These are 3 of the samples, few beachfront properties. The one in the middle, Memo Valleira, is right beside us, so just 50 meters away. It has the name of the same beach, of course, that is beside the project. It has restaurants, swimming pool, beach access. It is a beautiful hotel for those that also want to enjoy that part. Martignal Hotel, it is 4 minutes from us. It is a luxury 5-star hotel with spa. It has lots of facilities, but also a condominium of villas. That is, it was launched in 2012, and we are going to be back to that in terms of comparables for those that are not familiarized with the market. So these are those comparables that I just referred to. It is important to give a little bit of context for those that are now thinking, what is the market growth that Sagres experienced, or what is the rental that I could obtain if I actually rent out the apartment myself rather than having that fixed rent that Aris offered. So in terms of the rental, Memo Valleira at the right of the slide, it is this a hotel that is just beside us. If you check in booking.com, the price per night would be around 280 to 315 euros during the month of August. And this is something that anyone can check in booking.com. This is similar to what you can expect in our studios. Of course, then it would depend on the occupancy. But if you do the numbers, the rental that can be expected when it's variable, when it's not fixed, it could be around a 5-6%. And when you look at the capital growth, it's actually very interesting to see how it evolved from 2011, that this condominium was launched. Villas or townhouses then were launched at 220,000 euros for the 2-bedroom. As of now, you can't find anything below the 475 to 525,000 euros. So before we move to a small video that is going to show you some of our properties, and from there we take we'll explain a little bit about the fund. Just to summarize, South Beach Sagres, it is a refurbishment project that entitled for 280,000 euros investment on the Golden Visa. It is located in the very popular region of the Algarve, famous for its lifestyle. It's out of 120 units that are the project. We have sold already 75 units. We do have a few units available of 2 bedrooms and some of studios. There is actually a promotion that we have until end of the month that we have the furniture included in the studios, which is valued in 20,000 plus VAT, and the 50% on the 2 bedrooms, which is valued in 24,000 plus VAT, offered at 12,000. All of the units include a parking space. There are 2 parking floors, -1, -2. Each of the units have a parking allocated privately, and it will have access from the same elevators to each of the floors of the condominium. And we offer a 3% rent for 5 years, optional for those that want to have a very convenient investment. So now with I'm going to show you the video of some of our properties. As Vicky mentioned, many of those are actually were made with the investors, with her investors from Manila has bought with us. Okay, so we just saw the investment opportunity that is giving access to the Golden Visa through the property investment. Now my colleague Raquel is going to take you through the opportunity that it would be through the investing in a private equity fund.
Thank you, Rosalia. So as we've highlighted, there's 2 very common routes that people become invested into Portugal from an investment perspective, but are also popular from a Golden Visa perspective. The first and foremost one is the one that we've just gone through, which are property related. But also now what is becoming more popular is a fund type of investment. And maybe if I can just set the scene as to why this is becoming popular. I think from our perspective, we're real estate investors, so we love real estate. I think internationally we find many investors that have a similar mindset to us. Although there are now, what we're finding is certain types of investors who actually don't want the headache of owning a real estate investment overseas. And therefore, this fund type of investment suits their needs quite well. I think there's three main drivers that also go into that thinking that they have, which are different to when you have a direct property investment. And this is really a summary of what those three main benefits are. First and foremost, the fund is a regulated vehicle, and it's regulated by a governmental agency in Portugal, which is equivalent to the SEC in the US. So it's a securities regulator. In Portugal, it's called the CMVM. And because it's regulated, I think a lot of investors feel a lot more comfort in being involved in that type of investment, because it's not only the sponsor who's responsible for the fund's activities, but there's an independent sort of third party, if you like, in this case, the government, that's also involved in that audit of the fund and the investment. So that's the first point. The second point is actually the fund is far more tax efficient than investing in property. If you think about investing in property, whether it's in your home country or abroad, there's typically any number of taxes that go with that. So when you acquire property in Portugal, there are some acquisition taxes that are levied on the investor. There aren't any such taxes on a fund. Equally, on any distributions from a fund, they're tax-free, whereas rental income would be taxed in Portugal, etc. So there are some significant tax efficiencies. And then lastly, in terms of what the fund does and its activity, well, the particular fund that we have, as you might guess, is actually involved in real estate investment in Portugal, but it offers an indirect exposure to that property performance, if you like, and therefore takes away a lot of the headache that people may perceive they may have by owning real estate directly. So those are the three main themes as to why someone may think about a fund type of investment. This is just going back to that first point where I said that the fund is regulated. You can see here the certifications of the regulation of our fund, and you can go onto the CMBM website and find our fund there with its regulatory number. I think the best way to explain the fund, because there's lots of detail that goes with the fund in terms of the fund manager, the fund advisor, the strategy, etc. But I do think that the best way to explain the fund is perhaps to look at its cash flows. And this slide really is an attempt to show how passive this type of investment is versus sort of a traditional property type investment. So what we've done here to illustrate the example in terms of cash flows is to show a 7-year timeline. Why 7 years? Well, typically anyone entering into this type of investment does so with the intention of securing their golden visa. That has a period of investment of a minimum of 5 years. It takes a bit of time to get into the investment at the front end, and at the end of the 5 years, people typically want to convert their golden visa into what Andre described as either permanent residency or citizenship. That takes anywhere between 8 months and a year. So a 7-year timeline feels about right. And if we start with today, if someone invests into a fund that is eligible for golden visa, the minimum investment amount, unlike in property, which is 280,000, the minimum investment amount in a fund is 500,000 euros. There are actually some subscription costs and fees at the front end of that investment. So whilst there aren't any taxes, there are some subscription fees of 5,000. So in total, the investor invests 505,000 today. Now, what then happens is that the fund has a target income, which is payable from the first year of a gross return of 3% or a net return of 2%. So in essence, what's happening is every year for those 7 years that the investor holds the fund, he'll be receiving 10,000 euros of net income. So that's accounted for here. And then the question is, what happens at the end of year 7, i.e. the exit? And you can see here that in September 2029, i.e. 7 years later, the investor exits at 500,000 euros. Now, the question is, why is that 500,000 euros? Because typically the fund will be exposed to real estate investments in Portugal, and therefore shouldn't the value of the exit of the fund be determined by whatever the value of the real estate is underlying the fund. And the difference is really here, and what makes this so passive is that we, as an Arish, provide an exit liquidity for the fund itself, where we repurchase the fund units at par being 500,000, which effectively means that irrespective of whether the property market has gone up or gone down, we will repurchase the fund units at 500,000. So when you summarize all of those cash flows starting from 2022, when you made your investment, taking into account all of your annual income amount, and then when you exit, you have a net return of 65,000 euros. So again, hopefully that illustrates quite clearly why the fund product is very passive compared to a property type investment. And because of the fact that the cash flows are not impaired by any taxes, it does also make it quite interesting from an economic point of view. Just to bring home this point about taxes in terms of the impact of them, what we've done here is just to show a side-by-side analysis of someone investing into a fund product for 500,000 or a property investment for 500,000, and we've used 500 to make the comparator realistic. You can see here that when you enter into an investment in property for 500,000, there are acquisition taxes that you would need to pay, which are in total 7.5%, which effectively means that in a 500,000 property investment, you actually end up spending 542,500, because when you take into account taxes, which are a cost for you, that increases the actual outlay by the investor. If you compare that to an entry into a fund product, which is for 500,000, because there are no acquisition taxes in a fund product, you actually only end up spending 500,000, which effectively means you need 42,500 less capital investment. So again, that just shows you an example of the impact of taxes on the inception of a trade. There are also differences on the running of the trade. As I mentioned, the income that you generate from a fund product is tax-free, whereas rental income received on property in Portugal is taxable. So other than that, the Golden Visa side of things is exactly the same as it is for property and for fund products. And so you have the same sort of steps, the same holding timeline, etc. Sometimes people view the entry into a fund investment slightly easier because with a fund product, you don't have real estate purchase contracts, etc. All you have is a fund subscription document, which sometimes makes it slightly easier for the lawyers involved to get someone invested. But other than that, the process is exactly the same. So I think, Vicky, we've now taken on people that have lasted this long, the journey through Portugal. So let me now hand it back to you so you can take up the baton from here.
Thank you, Rack. Thank you, everybody. We're now gonna go into the questions. There's a question: can foreigners own industrial and or agricultural land, and are these Golden Visa eligible? I think that's a question Andre could answer.
Okay, yes, it's possible. So Portugal is an open market. We have no restrictions to foreign investment. So you basically can buy anything which is on sale. So this is a possibility, and it's interesting that we have clients that first do their Golden Visa, so they buy the property for the purpose of getting the residency permit, and then they try to find other opportunities in the market. So it's so there's no limitation on the investment, and it is also possible to, of course, if you by buying these type of specific properties, also they can be also included as your Golden Visa plan.
Okay, Thank you. Are you locked in the fund? I think this is for RAC. Are you locked in the fund the entire time? Or can you switch investment funds? And what is the risk level of the fund?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Let's break that down a little bit. Obviously, the intention for anyone coming into this fund investment is to be invested for the minimum period of time, at least to qualify for the Golden Visa, which is 5 years. However, I guess we recognize that things may change, life changes, etc. And some people may want to exit early from the fund because they've decided that they no longer want to qualify for the Golden Visa, etc. So we do have an early exit available. And again, this is an exit provided by Arish, whereby after year 3, if someone simply changes their mind, they can exit the fund. There are some terms and conditions attached to that, but yes, they can exit the fund early. In terms of the risk level of the fund, I think it's important for people to contextualize what this fund is. And if people's frame of reference is typically funds that are mutual funds that are traded in the US, these are not those types of funds. These are not liquid funds. They're private equity funds, which means that by definition, they do have a higher risk category. But that notwithstanding, the underlying investments of the fund are property, and therefore there is collateral within the fund which people can see and identify. And separately, because we know that investors in a fund want it to be as passive as possible, that is the reason that we provide the exit liquidity at par, and therefore from an economic risk point of view, the fund is managed down to a low enough level which we think is acceptable to most investors.
Great. There's another question. I think, Rack, this is also for you. What is the minimum amount needed to invest in Portugal to secure the Golden Visa?
Yeah. So as we highlighted, the Golden Visa program does come across, if you like, many different flavors. Those flavors typically relate to the investment threshold. And so for fund-related products, the minimum amount is 500,000 euros. But for property-related investments, the minimum investment is for 280,000 euros. But it's not the case that you can simply invest in anything that is 280,000 euros. It must be eligible, meaning that it has to be in a location that is eligible. And then the building itself must qualify and meet certain conditions. And so when Rosalia went through our project in South Beach, Sagres, and part of the reason I think it's been so popular since we launched it is because that filter is pretty much met by South Beach, Sagres in terms of its eligibility criteria at the lowest investment price point.
So there's another question. The price of a unit from Sagres at 280,000. So you need at least 2 units. Rosie, you want to answer that?
Sure. So this is in line with what my colleague now Rakesh was saying. So this is actually one of the things that makes this project very, very special. So only one single unit of 280,000 euros will give the eligibility to the main applicant and the family for the Golden Visa, because we meet all criteria that give us this benefit of reduction from the 500,000 euros standard of the Golden Visa to the very low entry point of 280,000. So only one single unit of 280,000 gives you the access to the Golden Visa.
Rosie, since you mentioned it will give you access to the family, there's a question. What is the definition of direct family for the Golden Visa?
Okay, so Andre can jump in if there is anything that he wants to add, but just to simplify, this would be the main applicant, the spouse, the kids below 18, and those that are above 18, but that are still single and in education studying full-time. And also the parents and the parents-in-law of the main applicant, provided that they are dependent to the main applicant and they are above the age of 65, which is the retirement age in Portugal.
Well, thank you, Rosie.
Is there anything to add?
Absolutely correct. Yeah.
Mhm.
Great.
Thank you.
Andrea, this question for you. At what stage or estimated month in the application process will we have an idea if the application is approved or rejected?
Okay, so this is a good question because I think we can also share some more information on the details of the filing of the application. So the application takes basically 2 steps. So after completing the investment and collecting all the personal documentation, everything is submitted to the immigration for a pre-analysis of the documentation. Of course, that this our law firm provides to the client before doing this, of course, a legal opinion that confirming that all documentation is properly prepared and that the client, of course, will not expect any surprise when submitting the application. But as I said, we need first to submit, and this is done online, so all documentation with the property documentation, personal documentation. Then we get a response from the immigration basically saying that, okay, the process was pre-approved, okay, you can contact your client so that the client can come to Portugal to collect fingerprints. And this will be the second stage where the client will visit Portugal. And at that moment, it will be the final submission of the application. After that, we expect like 3, 4, 5 months to get the residency card.
Thank you. This is an important question. I think, Rosalia, this is for you because you're Spanish. Why Portugal over Spain?
Okay. So I think that when we look at the countries, the lifestyle, culture, they have a lot of similarities. But leaving that aside, if we focus only on the Golden Visa programs and try to compare what are the benefits of both, first thing that we have to say is that in Spain, the minimum amount of investment is 500,000 euros. And in that case, there are no exceptions. So if budget is one of our main concerns, then Portugal would be 280,000 euros as against 500,000 euros. Second comparison, and probably the most important, in Portugal, you would have access to apply for the citizenship after 5 years or holding the Golden Visa without the need to move into the country. However, in Spain, in order to apply for the citizenship, you're going to have to relocate yourself and your family to Spain. And that is for a minimum of two years. And this is 2 years only because Philippines is a Spanish colony, but otherwise it can be up to 10 years. So if we focus in Philippines, the families would have to relocate to Spain for a minimum of 2 years. That normally takes you to around 3 because it is 1 year to obtain the passport. So this requires a lot of planning. Some families would be able to do that, some others would not. But most important, even if you were able to relocate your family, this would have big implications on taxes. So Portugal has a very friendly taxation. It does not have any wealth tax, but Spain, it does. So the moment that you become or you move to Spain and you become therefore tax resident in Spain, you would start paying taxes over your global wealth. And this is up to a 2.5% yearly. So if you have, just to run numbers, and a wealth of $100 million, that would be a payment of 250,000 euros yearly on taxes to the Spanish government. So this is a big difference. We don't have wealth taxes in Portugal. So in Portugal, even if you become tax resident, you would pay 0. And also we don't have in Portugal donation or heritage taxes. So when you have the properties that you're purchasing, even to your spouse or kids, there will be no taxes implied. In Spain, it can be from 7 to 35% tax when you actually donate or give your kids the properties. So I think that this summarizes taxes and citizenship are the main reasons.
Thank you, Rosie. I think we'll take one more question and then we'll probably have call it an end. Will you also be able to help in managing the property for us? Manage the rentals.
Yes, so we do have actually 2 options for the clients. Option 1, the most convenient of all, is we sign a lease agreement with them for 5 years, and we have a payment made quarterly to them, which is a 3% annual. They completely forget about the property until the time they complete the 5 years. This 3% is net of management, utilities, cleaning, maintenance, etc., and only before taxes and condominium. Option 2, if they want to have a little bit more involvement, they can still work directly with the property manager that will be, in any case, managing the condominium and opt for a higher return. But in that case, it will rely on occupancy.
Thank you. So thank you, everybody. Some of the questions are consultative. We will be able to have a private one-on-one Zoom with you to get a free consultation with our lawyers. It's very simple. Like I said, Portugal, you don't have to relocate. You only have to stay 7 days. You need a clear NBI. There's no age limit, no health check, and you have to keep the investment for the next 5 years. And that's about it. My number, just in case you need to reach out, it's 0917-856-1237. You can also get my contact details from Manila House. I'm also a Manila House member. I'd like to thank Bambina for hosting with me today's event and everybody else. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. I actually had one question, just a brief question before we close. I wanted to ask, in the light of everything that's happening today, you hear about, for example, in London, a lot of oligarchs are, for want of a better word, buying properties and not actually living in them. Now, if you were to go to Portugal and buy property with the intent of, living there, settling there, or having second citizenship, would you end up going to a place where buying in a place, and then when you actually go and spend the 7 days you need there, it's empty, which is kind of like, do they become like ghost towns in a way, or ghost buildings, complexes or something, which is kind of what has happened in certain parts of central London, for example, or certain buildings in New York, where certain wealthy people have chosen to invest in but not actually live. I'm talking more about quality of life kind of thing, like the kind of environment you would be living in.
Yeah, maybe if I could tackle that, because obviously I'm from London and also have experience of Portugal. Look, I think that it's a fair question, Amina, but it's probably also fair to say that the story in London and New York doesn't translate as well into Portugal. So you don't have these sort of ghost tower blocks, which are extremely expensive and bought up by any number of international investors. And the lights are on, but no one's there, if you like. You don't have that in Lisbon and Porto. You certainly do not have that in the Algarve, which is obviously where SBS is located. The Algarve is a location that is very much a lifestyle location. So if someone is going to be acquiring there, then typically, you see, particularly post-COVID, you see a lot of Portuguese people now not just using it as a holiday destination, but as a lifestyle move, because they've worked out they can work from anywhere with Zoom, etc. So you're seeing more and more people there. But just generally, I think the Algarve is, it's a popular location from a lifestyle perspective. That's not just with very rich people, but you have any number of people coming from the UK, from the Netherlands, from France, etc. So it's not really comparable in that way, in a good way.
Yeah, so that's one more point for Portugal, right?
Yes, for sure.
In favor of Portugal. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us today. It was very nice to see you all. Nice to see a lot of members in the audience as well. And of course, Vicky, who is one of our members. And again, looking forward to seeing you all in person. We've done this before in Manila House a couple of years back before the pandemic. Hopefully we'll be able to do that again soon. But in the meantime, you know how to reach us. Any questions you have for Vicky and her team, the number is up on the screen right now, or you can always get in touch with us at Manila House. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.